Hello everyone. Lots of new updates in regards to Swift and more importantly, the X's and QNT. This whole particular update about how these will explode in 2025. Again, understanding supply and demand forces because of mandates. Smash that like if you haven't done so already. Let's just jump right into the material. Here we go. First thing we're going to get into is this right here. Another update from Swift.com. And basically speaking, what do you see? Well, it talks about, for example, the U.S. Regulated Settlement Network. A lot of times I mentioned to you guys the whole thing with the RLN. Well, it's also understanding the RSN. Swift is investigating how their interlinking capabilities could integrate emerging bank-led networks, obviously such as the RSN, but again, with traditional financial systems. Swift has also recently been named a participant in Project Agora. And if anything, a lot of people feel as though that Quant has a huge connection with that as well. And on top of that, look at what it says in regards to the BIS. Writing's on the wall, everybody, because we know the BIS connection to Quant. And again, what do you see in regards to wholesale CBDCs? You see the whole thing about that being tokenized, but more importantly, to a unified platform. And then as I jump to the next part, again, from Swift, look at all this mention about global interoperability. For 50 years, Swift has played a vital role in increasing global interoperability and enabling fast, frictionless, and secure transactions. And look what it says in regards to going to the next phase. More mentions of interoperable new systems. More importantly, innovation, extending global interoperability to CBDCs and tokenized assets. So take it to this next part. It's all about future-proofing this. Now, this one is a few months back, but it's going to pound it home. Because Swift mentions not just future-proofing, but again, think about how things are written. I think I just wrote it as future space proofing, but they wrote it as future dash proofing, the financial ecosystem, and how they made great strides in 2024. Well, check this out. If you were to go over to quant.network, you could call this a coincidence, but again, it's the terminology. If you go to quant.network, search result 1 of 1 of future dash proofing. And it talks about, for example, blockchain complexity, the path to successful implementation. Don't ever lose sight on that implementation, because when you go over here, top part dates back to last summer, but again, Celine Justice, and going down to here, it talks about that whole thing of simplifying adoption. We all want to see it be simplified, but more importantly, it means that you need future proofing. And if anything, your project for future developments in the DLT sphere needs a better version to control that. And you need to have a less complex and basically have a more innovative infrastructure. Okay. So Quant brought the right partners, etc., etc. But again, back to Swift. Why point this out? Because McKinsey, they're one of the best consulting firms out there. Okay, world renowned. McKinsey estimates that the low value international payments market, defined as transactions worth 100,000 or less, is worth around 12 trillion. Now, when I see statements like this, I want to point this out to each and every one of you guys. When we talk about Ripple doing the whole thing of, for example, cross-border payments, but the focus on institutions, the focus on, the commercial bank money, some people call it the big money. Well, what about Stellar in the mix? People pointing out that they are also part of that mix. They'll follow XRP, but it's a lot of that retail peer-to-peer money. Is this a representation of that peer-to-peer money? I think it is. And I think this is absolutely profound to see statements like this, especially out of nowhere, all of a sudden within the last few days, especially with Meridian 2024 going on and Stellar's killing it in that field. As we also see right here, yeah, worth around 12 trillion, like I mentioned. And a little bit more from Swift, because if you go to swift.com, they talk about significant milestones on the road to faster payments, of course, in the industry migration to what, everybody? ISO 222. But more importantly, here's like your XRP plug. High value payment systems and across the Swift network for cross-border payments and, of course, reporting. Adoption of ISO 222, which began March 2023, again when it went live, will run to, of course, November 2025 and allow payment providers to exchange more information and in a more structured way. This is key to increasing straight-through processing, in particular when handling financial crime compliance. Now, when we talk about compliance, well, also understand the whole idea of XDC. And more importantly, XDC stands out not just with the whole thing of the Electronic Trades Documents Act, okay? But more importantly, so many connections when it comes to electronic bills of lading. Swift even references it. And like you see, they're actively developing an interlinking solution for central bank digital currencies. More importantly, understand, emphasis on what, everybody? Something that would interoperate with the multitude of blockchain networks emerging around the world. And again, connect electronic bills of lading platforms and accelerate digital trade. XDC always stands out in that regard, but more importantly, how so? Well, a little bit more from Swift, because they point out how there's a lot of gain by digitizing global trade, but again, it's an incentive for the whole world, reducing costs, improving transparency, mitigating fraud, but addressing 2.5 trillion trade finance gap. And back to the whole thing of electronic bills of lading, because compared to their paper equivalent, electronic bills of lading, aka EBL, reduces the risk of document loss and fraud, and it speeds up the transfer of documents and shrinks the carbon footprint associated with paper processes. And again, back to a citation from McKinsey, which again they predict that adopting EBL could save the industry 6.5 billion a year and enable 40 billion in global trade, of course, by 2030. A lot of it's got that way higher than some of these projections from McKinsey. Now, some of you guys want to see some actual examples. Well, if you go over to XDC, you see that they cite this whole thing with trade trusts about verification of documents, but I thought I would freeze the frame a little bit for you guys to make it easier to follow. You can create and revoke documents. You can do all the simple things that you're accustomed to, right? But again, create a document on what, everybody? Well, XDC. And more importantly, it's also referencing back to the whole thing of bill of lading. Choose a document type to issue. And again, to see this on trade trust speaks volumes. But as I take you to the next frozen frame, that way it's not moving around so you can understand it easier. Again, creating a document on what? XDC. And again, the document issued successfully. You know, sometimes people wanted to see the utility. You know, so much talk about tokens and coins and what they do and the promise of how it all works, but sometimes you just need to see a visual. And you definitely see that. And if anything, you see that on XDC. And on the final one, again, what do you see here? You see the events that take place, and again, the ease of access. Everybody understands how easy it is to just drop and drag something, whether it's on Trade Trust or the next platform. Now, back to the whole thing at XRP for a moment. Swift has this update once again that they're developing a beta version, of course, of the CBDC connector solution after a first iteration of a sandbox testing, but there was participants. And it's again recognizing the clear solution. All right, so what's the next step? Well, they state that 3 central banks and monetary authorities, including the Hong Kong Monetary Authority of, let's face it, Hong Kong, HKMA, but they also include the National Bank of Kazakhstan. And I won't get into the whole thing of Kazakhstan, but I will get into the whole thing of Hong Kong because, again, integrating the solution with their own infrastructure for what, everybody? Direct testing. In my opinion, we're beyond testing. We may see more pilots in the future for other countries. But what is an example without even saying XRP? Well, again, it's going farther with the research. Shout out to this guy. A lot of you guys already follow him. Great researcher. It's Rohitku, right? AKA ISO 222. Let's do it. He stated a while back in October of 2023, literally a year ago, okay? This is aging well. The Hong Kong Monetary Authority, aka the HKMA, published results at least then on CBC pilot with atomic settlement, HKMA pilot, the use of XRP private ledger, including offline transactions. And now, in light of everything recently from Swift, I could put 2 and 2 together just like anybody else. But again, what you see here, I think it's really worth pointing out because, boom, EHKD, and again, those pilots. And it's no longer just hypothetical in regards to will this acquire or use XRP. Rohitku goes into the details of, well, from his findings and his research, that Ripple did demonstrate tokenization in Hong Kong Monetary Authority with the EHKD pilot program. And of course, using what, everybody? A new CBDC platform. And again, you see, for example, Ripple. I think that's definitely worth pointing out. And more importantly, it's understanding how this, of course, all comes together. Because when I take you to this part, you see right here, and I'll blow this up on the other screen. What? Well, they talk about how this will run on a new private ledger with XRP ledger technology. So, some people say, well, it won't, it says Ripple, but it doesn't say XRP. Well, boom, XRP. As I take you a little bit further into this, let's take you back over to here. And again, look at the date, everybody. October 17th, literally today, a few hours ago. Swift data shows focus needed on beneficiary leg for faster international payments. And look what it also mentions. Today, 90% of cross-border payments sent over the SWIFT network reach destination banks within an hour. But more work must be done at the beneficiary leg. And more importantly, it's that journey in the receiving country to meet the G20's end-to-end processing target for international payments. And that's according to SWIFT network data. Now, check this out. Keywords are always important to pay attention to. Again, if you go over to Quant.network and you literally type in beneficiary, we get a search 101, the pragmatic path to programmable payments. Some people are going to say this is coincidence, but you want to know something? It'd be one thing if it was one term, but when you get multiple terms and when you look more into it, it tells you that it's worth paying attention to. Because just a couple months ago, back in August, again, this particular citation, and if anything, written by Gilbert Verdian about pragmatic path to programmable payments. And as I take you down to the bottom part, it says here, for example, that there's an impact on this whole thing. Programmable payments will mean intelligent bank accounts with personalized logic will be built in. A customer could set up a rule which pays the rent only once their salary arrives, thereby avoiding unarranged overdraft fees. Similarly, they could tell their account to save 30% on their salary only when they have a balance that will remain over, for example, 3,000 euros, but they could also send their child 20 euros if their balance drops below, for example, 50 euros. Simple locks of this type will be among the first programmable payment use cases that come to market and will assist customers with their personal finances while reducing the time businesses spend chasing payments. Think about that. That's value, the internet of value. Now look at this part. This becomes even more interesting when we consider the possibilities of 2- and 3-party locks. Under the latter, funds could be pre-authorized in favor of a beneficiary with final settlement controlled by a third party. Use cases here include basically the conveyance with split payments and trade financing. Again, think of Quant, XDC, XDC, R3, Quant Network, R3. And again, back to the whole thing of the RLN, Regulated Liability Network. So that's aging well. Now check this out. This pounds home everything with what's going on with Swift, because we see here from the IETF Secure Asset Transfer Protocol. Okay, and on this one, this dates back to last summer as well, but a lot of people, let's face it, they don't really jump into some of this and listen to the whole thing, and I'm glad to bring it to you guys. But no knock on anybody else, but it's the whole thing of understanding SATP, Secure Asset Transfer Protocol, and again, the IETF, Internet Engineering Task Force connection. And the highlights literally in these red ovals, because again, what do we just talk about with the reference from Quant Network, and more importantly, the reference from Swift? Beneficiaries, right? And again, what does it say on the right side? Application may interact with the network and with gateways. This addresses broader types of applications that interact, of course, with the network. For example, dApps. Well, what about maps, aka multi-apps? Okay, what about addressing broader use cases? Exactly. So you will see here Thomas Hardjano of MIT. And if anything, listen to this. And if this isn't pounded home for you, well, that's okay. You can still listen along, and here we go.
So one, if I may, one clarity of some history of the working group is there was a lot of stuff that I think people have interest in working on here, but the negotiation with the IESG to get this off the ground was we minimize our work into sort of the core protocol between the two gateways, but there are requirements that the core protocol will impose upon implementations in, within a network. So, one of the things discussed a lot was possibly the legal ramifications of what we expect these two networks to, actually have some sort of a legal agreement, so that it falls back to the court system or something when transactions fail or things like that. Or we require that a network have the ability for a gateway to lock an asset. We don't describe how, right? We don't say, you must use an HTTP-based, REST-based API. We just say there should be some sort of, some sort of API with these requirements in order for, the security to be sort of backed up in between. So we're trying to slice it into different groups, where right now we're only talking between the two networks, but there are ramifications of how that ripples out into other parts of the architecture. So it has made it very tricky how we stick with our chartered requirements without stepping over those bounds, and yet still impose some requirements. And that in the IETF, we often come back and maybe need to make some changes in the future. Hopefully we won't have to do that, but that happens occasionally. Yeah.
That's right.
So listen to some of those examples, and if anything, if you need to rewind that, go ahead and do just that, because sometimes you need to hear it twice. So take it to the next part. I want you to see this for yourself, and that is a little bit more about why all this matters. Because guess what? We have updates in regards to a PDF from Swift released literally today. And it's something I'm going to pull up on the screen for you. So it's a spotlight, as it says. It's basically this whole thing referred to as Swift Spotlight on Speed Report October 2024. So in this PDF, again, another reference to McKinsey, because it says in an age of increasing global trade, think about that, because we did talk about XDC not that long ago, and rising e-commerce, international payments are more vital than ever in supporting businesses, enabling economic interconnectivity. According to McKinsey, cross-border payments drive over 150 trillion inflows globally, and this figure is only expected to grow. That's tremendous. You know, again, just think about some of these assets: XDC, XRP, XLM, and again, the orchestrator of it all, and that is what we got going on, like, apparently with even the United States, everybody, when it comes to the regulated settlement network. Okay, so as I jump down, I want you to see this. It says the G20, and here's another, I guess you call it requirement, mandate. Hey, whatever terminology you want to use is fine. But apparently, the G20 set 2027 as the deadline to meet ambitious targets. So I want you guys to understand that when we talk about the whole thing of ISO 222 mandate, especially with messaging systems, that's one thing. But then to go from that to G20 is literally saying, look, all this needs, in regards to cross-border payments, this has to be a done deal by 2027. That needs to be fully implemented, and maybe in 2025 with regulations, hopefully that will turbocharge that so we don't have to get to 2027. Okay, maybe that's just a final thing. But for me, when we get to the peak, because we talk about 4-year cycles, maybe one way we should look at this is basically like this: 4-year cycles are the whole concept that existed, for example, with Bitcoin and Ethereum, because of Bitcoin halving cycles. Okay, there has never been a utility run in the entire history of blockchain and DLT, in crypto, basically speaking. So would there be a 4-year cycle in regards to utility run? And where I'm going with that again is this. 2025 should be regulations. Do we count that as like the first year? Just hear me out. I know this sounds like a crazy thing to talk about. Then, for example, 2027, 2026, 2027, you're now into about roughly 2 years of that. Okay? Well, everybody's looking forward to, like, not just seeing things go up a little bit, but we want to see that life-changing wealth. So is it safe to say by 2030 you have that peak of that adoption? To me, that makes sense. And don't get me wrong, a lot of us will take profits on the way. And again, none of this is financial advice. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I just provide research. But that is the way that I'm literally looking at all of this moving forward. And I'll take you to this next part, because I know this is becoming quite a deep dive. And let's face it, everybody, that's just what I do, right? So again, pay attention to things that I refer to as terms, keywords, and so on. I'm going to full screen this again. Because when you see the terminology about transformation journey, especially when it comes to payments and how it's well underway, well, they talk about the collaboration being key to driving progress forward. But my other thing I want you to pay attention is, again, back to the whole thing of Quant, because number of services are already available to enhance payment processing. But it also mentions the whole thing of speeding up, like, the resolution of errors or delays when they occur. Say what you want, there needs to be orchestration, and it literally mentions this. So I'm going to take a pause to give you my own thoughts on this. So, it is my dream long term to be able to create like a couple of video games, right? Ever since a little kid, that's something I wanted to do, and I will get there. I am so determined that I'm going to get to there. But all of us have hopes and dreams, okay? Well, if you have an IT background, especially if you've ever done coding, for example, that you can write code, and especially if it's in a game, you're going to get error messages that are going to get sent back. You need an orchestration system that is going to recognize those error messages, and if anything, how it can, keep things flowing without garbling up the system or truncating the system. And MT, with the old Swift model, since apparently the 1970s, that was always an issue of, message truncating. And if you don't know these terms, basically speaking, like, you could have a huge log file, and if it gets too big, then it truncates, and then the original message maybe only show, like, for example, let's say it's a novel. You want to read it from beginning to end, right? Well, can you imagine if your novel was truncated because you know, there was like a scalability issue. Well, there's no scalability issues with reading a novel, but the point is, in the world of log files and so on, there is. And basically, if the log file gets too big, the message truncates, and then you only get a few lines at the top, for example, and then the lines below, it's just all garble. It's all gibberish. It doesn't make any sense. So ISO 222 is supposed to solve that. ISO TC 307 is supposed to orchestrate, again, all this. If anything, orchestrate payments from wholesale CBDCs. And apparently by 2027, 2028, Quant will focus on the retail side of that. And of course, that's way out in the future. But again, Gilbert Verdian, ISO TC 307 orchestrating it. So when we say, you know, it's like everything flows together. The way I look at it is like, and this is a good analogy, Ripple XRP, Stellar XLM, XDC, we could throw Hedera, HBAR, and some of the other ISOs into the mix, right? Like Algorand, IOTA, and so on. I look at all this as being like, these are part of the choir, if you will, part of that orchestra. They all play an instrument, and there's going to be key ones that might be playing more of all that than others. Obviously, Ripple stands out in that regards because of the payments. So as I jump to this next part, I want to show you a little bit more of these keywords in regards to orchestration. And I want you to see what I'm talking about here again. Because when I type in, again, keywords like orchestrating, Quant to showcase programmable payments at EBA Day 2024, and search result 101. And as I take you to there, look what it says. And again, this is pretty darn recent. I mean, you know, this is basically May 13th. But again, we saw EBA Day basically, you know, happen not even a month ago, I think. So it says, under the banner of orchestrating the dialogue on payments, the collaborative advantage this year is the Euro Banking Association's flagship conference and exhibition. And of course, it really took place in Lisbon. And that, of course, allowed Gilbert Verdian to do his final call to action. But again, it's understanding that Summit did this whole thing of leading payments and transactions to the banking executives. But don't dismiss this. More than 1,000 financial service professionals met there. Well, of course they would want to meet there. They're going to want to meet, like, no pun intended, the orchestrator. So it ranged from trend payment technology, but again, understanding orchestration. And again, founder, CEO, Gilbert Verdian, part of that panel. And again, his call to action. All right. I know this is really detailed, but again, Swift. So yesterday, if you watch my deep dive video in regards to Stellar, the answer to this is in that video. Okay, so I don't want to get, you know, rehash that again, because you can just watch that video and get the answer, and that card will be at the end of this particular video. But again, understand Swift to launch AI-powered fraud defense for cross-border payments. There's a key partner for Stellar that you'll want to pay attention to in that regard. And a lot of people are covering it, but not everybody got into the weeds about that. All right, more updates. Swift states that there is a new approach that will utilize structured ISO 222 messages. And look at this, everybody. An API or a GUI for update and access. And interesting to see some of this because, was it state? Participants will engage in various testing phases through Q2, Q3, and Q4 of 2024, with the solution slated for general availability in November 2024. That's next month. Get this. There's live trials, and I pointed this out in another video, but again, I want to pound this on. Live trials of digital asset transactions on Swift to start in 2025. And again, this is posted at the beginning of this month, October 3rd. But starting next year, banks across North America, Europe, and Asia will embark on live trials of digital assets and currency transactions, of course, over the Swift network. And trust me, you guys can see us a mile away, and I hold Chainlink. Man, does it drive me nuts. every single time, those guys will come in the comments. They won't listen to any of the presenting the material and just say, well, doesn't Swift have a partnership with Chainlink? Okay. Does that mean that it's the only one they can choose? When you guys go to a party, do you only go to one party? Do you only buy one hamburger? Do you only, for example, drink one brand of soft drink? All right. You get my point. Check this out. Update. Shout out to Donnie, our brother on X. Donnie stated, for example, that, hey, Max, look at this. Secure Asset Transfer Protocol particular update. So look at this. SATP mentions here that you see some of these updates. And more importantly, active internet draft authors, Martin Hargreaves of the Quant Network, Thomas Hardjano of MIT, and we know that Hardjano works back and forth with Quant and also MIT, you know, for that collaboration, if you will. But RFC Stream is Internet Engineering Task Force, and again, a proposed standard, a new standard. And look what was originally requested. States February 28, 2024 originally, and states it's not ready yet. But here's what's important. What's important is understanding what's on the near horizon, because look what it says. The milestone they're looking to accomplish is going to be by December, and they chopped off the S right there, but again, Asset Transfer Protocol document. Huh. So what do we see in regards to all this? Well, I don't have an answer on that because I don't have anything behind the scenes, but I thought this was interesting because to me, this is all coming true. And if anything, this is not super long. Listen to this. This is Thomas Hardjano of MIT. And again, SATP, problem space, and goal. Listen to this. You tell me what you think in regards to this. Here we go.
Next slide, please, Wes. So this is probably, you know, I put this in just to clarify that you know, we have a growing number of digital asset networks. They all run on the internet. Many of the next generation of developers may not even realize that many of the, you know, features and protocols actually run over IETF RFCs, right, IETF standards. So this fact that there's just a large growth and there's a lot of proprietary stuff out there introduces a number of interesting security challenges and of course data privacy challenges. And you know, my solution to this is, well, you know, go back to the IETF and, you know, do what the IETF is best doing, namely producing written technical standards. And the goal is for interoperability of these networks. Next slide. Am I speaking loud enough for people online? Yeah. So when we say network interoperability, the goal really is to move across a digital asset, and there's a definition of what digital asset is, across from one network to another, satisfying certain conditions such as, you know, atomicity, consistency, and so on. Today, what we're seeing in the industry is that people are doing just bilateral agreements, and to me, this is like the mid-90s when we have multiple ISPs, and ISPs used to do, you know, bilateral peering agreements. It's almost like that today, and there are a number of other, you know, proprietary transfer protocols that they're being used, but again, it's only for bilateral connections. So really, this is kind of a lack of written standards that financial institutions and other organizations can point to and mandate compliance of implementations. The lack of those standards are inhibiting the industry. It's like, well, you know, we don't want to enter because if something goes wrong, we lose money, we lose assets, you know, let's just wait. And I think this is a great opportunity for the IETF as a community to actually contribute, you know, to the world, particularly in the context of interop. Next slide, thanks. So this is from Philadelphia. So there's so many types and kinds of digital assets. So we're using the term value-bearing data object. So you have a value-bearing data object in one network and you're trying to move it across to another network. So that entails recreating exact copy on another network and deleting or invalidating the original copy. And so you need this condition that there can only be one at any one time, and it needs to satisfy the ACID property: atomicity, consistency, isolation, durability. This is your database textbook, and freshman or junior textbook. And the transfer must be verifiable by an authorized third party, because there's going to be disputes, and you need to be able to bring in an auditor or somebody like that that can replay and look at the traces of the transfer and say, yes, did not happen, or a fault happened, or a bug happened, or somebody was dishonest, right? So that's a key requirement. Next one. And so this is the proposed scope is the yellow area in the middle. So people ask me all the time, well, what about the networks? Well, there's just too many types of networks, and new ones are coming up all the time. And to me, this is, if you're old enough, this is the LAN problem. If you guys remember IBM SNA networks and DECnet and Ethernet, you know who won that battle, Ethernet. But this is also exactly like intra-domain and intra-domain routing, right? So what we're saying in our language, the yellow bit is the BGP protocol, right? So are we going to define what a router is? The gateways? No, we're not going to build gateways. We don't know how to build gateways. That's implementer's problem. What we're going to do is define the interaction between the gateways, and that's the yellow bit. And I think this is the best thing for the industry as a whole, because the industry itself is still emerging and evolving, and new types of networks are being created, right? So we don't want to touch that. Let the market decide which type of network wins the day. That's fine. That's fine with me. But we want to ensure interoperability across these types of networks.
Okay, so there's a lot more in regards to all this, but Thomas Hardjano mentioned, for example, RFC. And this is a finding that I want to share with you guys, because you heard me explain, I guess you could say, my own analogy in regards to orchestration and all that. Well, again, something can combat error messages and whatnot. So check this out. This is from Quant Network as well. And what you see on the screen is in regards to this reference. This is a while back, June of 2023. Bringing APIs to life, webhooks, right? As you jump down, it says the beauty of Overledger webhook REST APIs is that not only do they follow industry best practices. Let's see if this is on your screen. Yeah, it is. All right. Not only do they follow industry best practices, for example, they follow the whole thing of RFC 7807 for API error responses, but they can also be used to power automation of business flows alongside blockchain tech. Overall, the use of APIs and webhooks to support blockchain and financial services has the potential to bring significant benefits, which translate to improved operations and better services to their customers. I mean, how many times have we seen examples in regards to webhooks for both Ripple XRP and especially Stellar XLM? But again, when we talk about orchestration of ISO TC 307, think about that, for example. The beauty of that with REST APIs and flowing through what? Overledger. So you may think that error messages, there's nothing beautiful about it, but you can't dismiss it. Again, we don't want message truncation whatsoever. We don't want to go back to that old MT messaging standard that is just Swift. So I'm going to take you to this next part. We're about to wrap it up here soon. And again, just in case you were wondering about some terminology, RFC basically means request for comments. Okay, formal standards track document developed in working groups within the Internet Engineering Task Force. And speaking of the Internet Engineering Task Force, because some people who are new, and welcome by the way, you may see some of the terminology and not understand that they have like a partnership with Quant. What do you see here? Well, back to the whole thing of what I was talking about. Overledger orchestrates all communication between multiple points. It adds an extra layer of security to transactions and data exchanges on the blockchain. And like you also see, another way to achieve interoperability is through a bridge technology, where a portal between two or more networks is created to enable the seamless transfer of assets through our bridges, follow the latest security protocols, and understand how they are developed in partnership with the IETF, again, Internet Engineering Task Force. So boom, verified partnership, just in case some people are wondering about it. And maybe you're old school and you had this for a while, you never knew it. So what about this pathway forward? Okay. Well, from Quant Network, they have this about the instant payments legislative proposal. And think about that. Significant step towards creating a more streamlined and efficient payment system. I mean, how many times have you seen Gilbert Verdin reference that, hey, we got a final call to action, and basically this is it, because it has to be it. We got to get this thing going. And 2025, it seems like there's a lot of dates coming up for January with the BIS. I think March again. I don't know if it's with the BIS again, but again, some other key dates. And then November 2025. All right, check this out. Shout out to Quant Papa for the screenshot. Plug and play simplicity as an API-based platform. Overledger is easy to use and offers multi-chain REST APIs designed to abstract blockchain's complexity and remove the need for expert developers. And speaking of that, remember how we talked about APA or AP? I always say APA. It's because I used to teach APA format with citations back in college. But anyway, API gateway model. So data translation. The DLT API gateway connector can perform data translation, but to what format? And again, think about if you were paying attention for the beginning of this outline, you didn't skip around. What was the first thing that we mentioned at the beginning of the outline? We were talking about, for example, gateways and APIs, and look how, again, even how this is orchestrated. And more importantly, this was a screenshot taken from a Zoom call. All right. So you see the data, you see the DLT API gateway connectors and how they can perform data translation. DLN 1 connector and 2 and 3. And what do you see? You see, for example, MDEP. And takes you to this next thing, because sometimes people want to see an actual example. Well, boom, there you go. Boil it, mash it, stick it in stew, because you see platform to integrate and test payments and banking applications. DLT1, DLT2, Core Ledger API, Quant Overledger. Then you see CBDC API. And more importantly, ability to interoperate with existing payment systems. And it's all there. And again, understand the whole thing of use case prototyping, how it connects, for example, with Project Roslyn. We've already been there, done that. Go to the Quant Network site and see all that research if you need it. But again, the BIS, Bank of International Settlements, Innovation Hub, Bank of England, and again, commercial banks, institutions, fintechs, you get the gist. But again, emphasis where this right here, because payment systems will need an API orchestrator, and payment systems obviously are going to integrate, ISO 222. And again, it's all about the participating networks. What participating network? Think about it. Maybe the RLN, the Regulated Liability Network. And there's a lot of things part of that. Hedera, obviously the whole thing of Quant, Ripple XRP, Stellar XLM, heck, even apparently XDC. And again, you see ISO 222. So for me, it's the saying goes, like, I think this is a very big deal, but we're always going to research these things. At least I am. And I'm glad to bring it to you. Because as the saying goes, I know what I have. I know why I hold it. The research trumps FUD 110%. Hey, do me a favor. You listen to this entire outline and simply type this into the comments. And that is the letter T and then the letter H, as in Thomas Hardjano. And I'll know that you listened to the whole entire outline. Really appreciate you guys listening to this. I will never stop bringing you guys the info, especially when it's something fresh from Swift or whatever. Of course, if I can. Work 3 jobs 7 days a week. It is pretty challenging. But nonetheless, I won't keep you anymore. Thanks again, everybody. God bless you all. We'll see you on the next one. Some of you guys ask what cold storage solution I use. I use this, and it is the Decent wallet. All right. I also, of course, have a ledger like this. All right. You can get a discount basically from going into the affiliate link, which is in all the live video descriptions and recorded and so on. And for the yahoos that are out there, they're like, this is just a shield. And, you know, we'll fix point this out. And it's a great point. Were you aware that you don't necessarily get a discount link just going straight to the site? No, you actually have to go through a platform like this. So how cool is that? You know, I don't think anybody's complaining about that. But anyway, use the link, get a discount. There's another one here. If you're the type of person you want to get one for you and your, you know, significant other, you could get 2 of them. They actually have another promotion, which is this, and I think this is cool. You can get an all-in-one card wallet plus backup card package. Interesting. I thought that was cool. And again, one of the main key things I like about the Descent wallet is not having to do the red tape of, you know, jumping through all the hoops for XDC and the custom folder. I mean, Edward Vincent can vouch on that. Some of you guys can too as well in regards to Ledger. That was a pain in the butt. You don't have that problem. You literally open up your phone, it's on your app, track everything that's going on, right? And, you know, saying goes, not your keys, not your crypto. You know the drill. Check it all out, though, if you wish to do so. It is truly the cold storage solution that I use for the most part. There's still some on Ledger that, you know, I kind of split it up on it and so on. So it is what it is. But if I have preference over one, I'm going with this one. A lot easier to use and so on. And some people, even to this day, still ask me which one to use.